Hey there and welcome back to another My Hero Academia Vigilantes video, and today we're going to be talking about episode 5, Judgement. Last time saw Koichi crash and burn when he briefly befriended Ingenium, and managed to secure a future offer to work on his support crew and perhaps move up to sidekick when the time comes after his graduation. Only for all of that to slip away when it was revealed that he was the vigilante, the Crawler. At the same time as that, we also had the whole B-Lady storyline buzzing along in the background, and so we do have quite a bit to follow up on. Let's jump into it. We start off the episode witnessing why Koichi currently has no real friends. In essence, he has poor social skills, was perhaps too drunk to read social cues, and ended up freaking out his brand new friend group by making himself seem like a predator of some sort. He was out drinking with them all and invited them back to his place, but the way to get to his house is by wandering through a derelict building. They hesitate, and so this galaxy brain grabs the nearest girl and tries to pull her into the darkness. Obviously, this makes him seem creepy and ruins his reputation at college, and ends his social life before it could really begin. Just like his hero career when you think about it. Both his failure here and his failure with Ingenium, they're really just his own fault. No idea what he was thinking with this, but I do think his newfound friendship with Knuckleduster and Popstep manages to kill two birds with one stone. He gets to start to live his dream to become a hero, even if he's not a pro hero, and now he also has some friends. Although at the same time, those friends are rather unhinged. Not really much else to say about the cold open. It was mostly just there for some exposition, a bit of backstory to fully explain things. It was fun, but I think it was kind of clear that he was unpopular with his classmates simply from the things that he talked about in prior episodes. I'm not sure if it was a 100% needed scene. The intro theme plays, and when we return, we get a pretty massive moment. On a big screen in the middle of the street, we see the news reporting on a string of jewellery store robberies and murders which have been committed by a general criminal turned villain, with police and now heroes hunting him down. Won't need to search too hard though, because then we cut to an alleyway and a close-up of a bloodied sword, and then of the suspect who's unmoving and badly wounded, probably dying. Before finally the shot shifts over to our new vigilante. Okay, so this is probably one I should have picked up on from the preview at the end of the last episode, but this is very obviously meant to be Stain before he was Stain, right? I mean, he certainly looks a whole lot more cleaned up here, but he does have the sword. Jeez, what happened, buddy? What happened? Rather surprisingly, we then have a time skip, jumping forward several months. This did kind of shock me at first. I figured the whole B trigger quirk stuff would have more urgency than that, but I guess not. They're really taking their time with it, hey? Although now that I think about it, it does make sense that she'd go slowly to try to attract as little attention from police and heroes as possible. However, now that I'm thinking about it, it might just be that the scene with the guy in Stain was set earlier, and the few months later is just meant to show that it's returning to the present of the show. Regardless, on with the story. We follow Popstep as she arrives at Koichi's place and immediately starts acting like she owns the joint, going into his fridge and stealing his pudding, eating it in front of him and then getting mad at him for not labeling it as his own, which would have prevented her feeling embarrassed in the first place. This would drive me absolutely insane, I have to say. Taking the only pudding in the fridge? Nah. That would lead to an Incredible Hulk scenario. The next part where she questions why he wears that hoodie all the time when he could probably get some better gear that would protect him more was pretty funny. This dude really just is an alternate universe Deku, isn't he? Showcasing his inner fanboy with his nearly complete collection of All Might vintage hoodies, probably running right from his debut up to the present day. Honestly, I need a scene of him and Deku comparing their All Might merch and getting really intense about it. On top of that, Koichi freaking out at Pop when she insulted his hoodie. That was cathartic. Dude gets crapped on the regular, and so it was good to see him be assertive, even if it's clear this is going to be a one-off or a rare event. Now, a brief side tangent, since I know it just makes it easier to draw and colour this guy with the same hoodie again and again, but does it bother anybody else that he has so many good different hoodie designs, and yet he only wears the same one over and over and over? Look at all these different awesome colour schemes he could be rocking, and yet he goes for the same old red and blue every single time. It's a shame. Anyway, he tells her that he has all the hoodies except for the Silver Age edition before we get an anecdote as to why he never applied to a hero school. Honestly, this is something I was wondering about as well. It's made clear in the story that UA is only one of many hero schools. The reality is that there are likely numerous ones across Japan. We've also seen that he's been pretty capable with the bare minimum of training alongside Knuckleduster. Thus, it doesn't make much sense that he didn't make the cut. In that regard, I really appreciated the explanation as to what was going on here. The story goes that he was late to his exam because when he was making his way there, already on a bit of a time crunch, he noticed a child had fallen into a nearby river. Since he has the heart of a hero, he strips down and jumps in to save them. He lands in the river and picks up the kid, and it turns out the river's very shallow, so he can just stand up and walk. I tell you what, that is some anime logic to not have him break his legs when he does his big cannonball if the water is that shallow that it only goes up to just above his knees. And on top of that, even though whilst it's shallow, it's rushing so fast that I think he would just be swept away anyway. Normal people in floods like that do all the time. Once again, just anime logic, isn't it? They get out of the river and Koichi gives away his Silver Age hoodie to the pink-haired kid before he zooms off to try to make the test. Of course, he does not make the test, and thus his dream of becoming a hero ended right then and there. This is followed up with a very funny little fantasy he has about how perhaps one day he'll see an interview on the news with that pink-haired kid who's just become a hero, and how it makes him proud that he could have inspired them at some point. I found it very funny how he has that line in that fantasy about how he'd recognize that pink hair anywhere, considering what we learn in the very next sequence. Pop storms out, saying his story's stupid, but we learn that it's only because she feels embarrassed about it, as she goes home and thinks about how it's frustrating that Koichi seems to have given up on his dream, that he should have more self-worth, and not think that his heroic spirit's dwindled. Of course, when she goes home, we learn from both her monologue and her pulling the hoodie out from her own closet, if you hadn't picked up on it from the hair already, that she was the little boy that fell into the river that day, with her slipping when using her quirk. The episode then hits the romantic music and has her monologue about how she's never stopped thinking about him since the day he saved her, and that when they met once more, he saved her a second time. So she packs his hoodie into a bag and starts leaping through the night across rooftops. Seriously feels like this huge romantic build, with her thinking about how she's always known that Koichi has what it takes to be a true hero. Although the idea of a 14 to 15-year-old girl having a romantic build with a 19-year-old man, it's a bit sketchy, isn't it? Thankfully, responsible adult Knuckleduster's there to put an end to any sort of tomfoolery, and so she and Knuckles eat the pudding that she'd brought over to share with Koichi. Bad luck to Koichi. Missing out on pudding twice in one night's gotta be rough. She then heads home, and this first story point finally ends. My god, it went for over half the episode. It was fun at first, but it lasted way too long. Could have been condensed. It really could have. Moving on, we see that rock villain guy is being released from jail after not being able to give any information as to who his dealer was. As he walks through the alleyways, he stumbles across a Chiska, who offers him more trigger, and so he shoots up. Okay, so what's his goal here? I figured you'd use this drug to help you do something. Rob a bank, or something along those lines. This guy isn't just some frothing loon like the Purple Hulk guy Knuckleduster wrecked, so why does he go full rage monster? Doesn't seem like he's lost full control. He even recognizes Koichi and speaks to him mid-fight. So what's his end game? Even if he managed to kill Koichi, or he never turned up to begin with, wouldn't a hero eventually turn up at some point to defeat him? We then get a little bit of lore here, that you can only get named a villain if you've got multiple quirk offenses. A simple one and done isn't enough to qualify. And yeah, I never really thought about this sort of thing, but it makes a lot of sense. The two begin to battle, and there's a very cute moment where Koichi hears the guy actually call him out as the Crawler, which gets him all excited. It doesn't last though, as Koichi knows that he can't beat this guy alone. Last time he needed Knuckleduster to help him out, but today he's on his own, which means that he needs to buy time for a hero or the cops to show up and stop the villain before they can hurt anybody. We cut over to Chiska, where some of my questions are answered regarding the rock dude's state of mind. The drug apparently makes you more aggressive, more prone to rage. But even still, he would have known that ahead of time, right? He would have known. So was his desire just to smash shit? He didn't have any plans of what he was going to do? Plus, the strength of his quirk has now increased alongside his rage, so he's stronger, and according to Koichi, he's faster. So here he is, in an enclosed space with this guy, running out of room rapidly as the debris makes it harder to keep his footing. He slips, and just like against the Purple Hulk, it's about to be all over for him until Stain jumps in for the save. And how is he this strong? How is that sword that strong? This man is a giant boulder, yet Stain holds his ass off with ease. In fact, he throws him back with enough force to cause wind pressure and smash him into a car. Isn't his quirk just blood paralysis? Does everybody in this show just have a base level of super strength these days? It's insane. He holds off the villain quite easily and puts him on the back foot almost immediately. And after the cops come, everybody has to scatter, but not before he introduces himself as Stendhal to Koichi and Pop. He looks so different here. He's so clean with a cool mask. What happened to this dude? How do you go from this to this? I'm really interested to see what pushes him over the edge and what makes him start to really hate heroes as opposed to just going after villains. Here we come to part of the episode that was just pure ick and nope. Koichi and the gang are hanging out at his house when Pop gets a message from the X-Men kids who invite her and Koichi to meet a guy that apparently wants to be tough on crime and on villains. It ends up being revealed that this guy was the ringleader of the trio that tried to sexually assault Pop and tried to kill Koichi, and did beat him up once for no real reason. And when they rightfully react badly, what does he do? Why, this guy storms out. They seriously gonna give Mr. Casual Sexual Violence a redemption arc? For real? Because that feels like the start of one. Who could possibly have thought that was a good idea? Disgraceful. We then have a pretty violent scene after this, where Stendhal tracks down and kills the rock dude, using similar tactics that Koichi and Knuckleduster did. He distracts him to reduce the strength of his quirk, this time using a dagger to the eye, before using that opportunity to pierce his skin with other daggers in his chest, stomach, and legs to bring him down and leave him defenseless. He gives your typical crazy pretentious Stain rant about lacking conviction and how he's going to cleanse his crimes with his sword. It's all the same crazy bullshit he always used to spout, but now it's just directed towards criminals instead. He then cuts off the dude's arm and leaves him to bleed out, which is pretty cold. I will admit though, I'm actually very excited about this because Stain has always had such an aura as an antagonist, and I'm looking forward to that moment where he snaps and the Vigilantes have to face him down. We finished up with him looking at photos of that gang that the green hair guy was in. Oh no, stop, no, don't kill them. Oh, it's a shame, he can't hear me. For real though, kinda hope Stain kills him. Kill him good! Unfortunately, based on how it's gonna go, I suspect Koichi and Knuckleduster are gonna save his ass, which is disappointing. After a bit of a sleepier episode today with some questionable narrative choices at the end, the next episode promises fights and moral quandaries. And I'm there for that at least. So, with all that being said, that's the end of the episode, and these have just been my opinions, and I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of this episode? Did you like it? Hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.